Well, thank you guys for being here on the day after Halloween. I don't know what that's called, the Halloween hangover day or something like that. It's great for me. I'm from Denver. My wife and I flew in last night about midnight, and we saw all the people in costumes walking around drunk, weaving all over the place. That made me happy. This is the other thing that makes me happy. This is my niece and nephew. This is them for Halloween last night. They look awesome. And so you may not learn much about website design, but you're going to learn about my hobby, which is reading about the science of happiness. And I'm actually an old dude at this point, 54 years old. I know I look great. But I got a senior in college here at Columbia, which is why we're up here visiting her this weekend and get to speak to you guys. But when I was in college, I studied economics, and they didn't have this notion of positive psychology. That's kind of evolved since then. I probably would have studied it. Maybe I'd have become a professor. Or behavioral economics. These are the topics I really love to read about in my spare time. I've probably read 50 books. I've read a bunch of academic articles, and I'm going to give you my version of the elements of happiness and how to apply them. So one of the things that's really interesting is, can you actually be happier in your life, right? We all actually have this thing called a happiness set point, and if you're just kind of naturally unhappy, I'm sad to tell you, you can make a difference, but you can only make about 40% difference. If you're pretty happy most of the time, you can really take that up another notch by doing some intentional activity, and of course the circumstances of your life have an impact on your happiness. The other thing is, there's a bunch of myths out there. The one that I find most fascinating is the last one, which is the correlation between money and happiness. And there's actually this thing called the hedonic treadmill. If you get some new car, you'll just get used to it. Hedonic adaptation is what that's called. And anyway, bottom line, I could go on and on about happiness. I think you'd rather learn a little bit about website design. This is the money page. Take a picture of this one. If you want to see my version of reading all these books and so forth on what the elements of happiness are, right? It's the most important one is invest in your family, friends, and relationships. You've really got to nurture those bonds of fellowship and friendship. Being grateful, there's a concept called a happiness journal or a gratitude journal, and that actually helps a lot. And ultimately, really, happiness is not about just sort of reaching some individual point. The way I would summarize it is it's actually making sustained effort and progress towards a goal that's important to you. Mark Manson says in his recent book, what are you willing to struggle for? Like, what are you willing to actually go out and put some effort in and struggle for? So how are we going to apply this to website design? One great website designer is Tony Hsieh, the guy who built Zappos.com. And he has a great book, one of my favorites of the ones I've read, called Delivering Happiness, that I recommend. And so we're going to use his formula for happiness, basically, which is interesting because it's not actual progress, it's not actual control in your life, it's just whether you perceive that you have those things. And then you really need to have meaning, that's that worthy goal. And then connectedness, we talked about a little bit. For the purposes of our discussion, vision and meaning, finding that's very individual. So we're going to talk about these elements and how they apply to website design. And then I added another one, which is that circumstances element, right? So your circumstances do matter. And so you've got to create freedom from worries and concerns for people, an environment where they can actually be happy. So let's jump in, starting from the bottom. Again, social connectedness is by far the most important element. So hey, social media is this thing that's out there in the world today, some big companies. I would tell you scientifically, probably not the way to happiness in our personal lives, because you'll tend to compare with the people that you're seeing on social media, and that is absolutely not a good step in happiness. But can a website build relationships and connections? I have a few ideas and some things that I've seen that I think work. So people tend to, I think, underestimate customer testimonials, particularly if that is very, very relevant to the person that you're talking to. So if they're in the same industry as the person who's written the testimonial, that can be great. Ratings and reviews, there's Trustpilots here I saw, Bizarre Voice I've used in the past. Those things can matter. Recommendations engines that say, hey, the classic Amazon, people who bought this also bought that. Or people like you who we've seen shop for these kinds of things bought this. Online chat, I've probably implemented online chat about 5 times across my career at this point. I have never seen it not work in terms of driving up customer satisfaction and being helpful, and that the ability for people to connect online. I'm a big believer in online chat. And just generally trying to make your website helpful is social connectedness in my mind. Perceived progress. Hey, milliseconds matter in your website. What are you doing to make sure that your website loads faster? Loads fast on mobile, loads fast in every possible way. I think not enough people are spending enough time on this. And Bezos, another guy who knows a lot about this, says, give your customers the gift of speed. So if your website's not loading fast, you're not giving perceived control to your customers, right? I heard there was a guy earlier, and then clear navigation. Look at the flows in your website to get to the critical things that people are doing, and is there a way to cut out a click? Is there a way to make that clearer and more easily navigable than it is today? Let's look at the flows that lead to a purchase. And there was a guy, Paul, what was Paul's last name? Martin, I think, who talked about site search earlier. He gave this great presentation in here a little bit ago, had like 70 slides, but this is another one I think people don't spend enough time on, is the search on your site has to be great. And do you have a team of people that are investing in making sure that when somebody types in gift, when they type in birthday gift, is one of the examples he gave, that it returns results that are relevant for that, like gift cards or specifically things that may be birthday gifts. So thinking hard about excellent search. This is pretty old, but as you're going through the flow of checking out, making sure they know where they are so that they have perceived progress. I'm at step 2 of 3 steps in this flow, making sure that's done. And then my son, when he orders something, man, he wants to know where it is. Like he needs that minute. So what is that order tracker, shipping tracker information that you can convey to people so that they feel they have this sense of control? I think I got on the wrong slide here or something, but whatever. Perceived progress, perceived control. I put order and shipment tracking on both, actually. So perceived control, can you sort the information in different ways? Can you sort by price? Can you sort by location? The ability to control that information is important. Can you choose the seller? Can you choose the shipping method? Can you do key casts with fewer clicks? One of the things I really think matters a lot and that you can do a lot with is doing things like the, who is it? I can't think of Flo's name, but where you're able to compare pricing from your site and what you have on your site to your competitors. It gives people, if you've got a great offering and you've got great pricing, make sure you make that relatively easy to do comparison shopping right on your site. Suggested items, as we've talked about, in order and shipping tracking. So this one's really important too. You've got to, I think this is underestimated as well. What are the trust symbols that you're putting on your site so that people know that they can trust that site. Simple things, and I've done tests, A/B tests on this stuff, but just simple things like the Visa and MasterCard logos on the bottom of your checkout page is actually really, really valuable to you and can improve trust as you get there. Secure server sites. I can't remember the names of some of the stuff that we've bought over time where we put these bugs down on the bottom of our site that are indicators that the site is a secure site and a site that you want to work with. Have you won any awards? Has your company got references that you can refer to or awards that you've won that make it more trustworthy? My company is a $27 billion company, right? We talk about that pretty clearly on the website when we're on the website, because we want people to know, hey, you can probably trust a $27 billion Fortune 113 company when you do business with them. One of the things I was talking with somebody about, does your site work well on mobile? If it doesn't work well on mobile, number one, Google's indexing is really scoring that poorly against you if it's a poor mobile site. But also, it just makes you look bad. It makes you look like you're not a great retail e-commerce player if you're not there. Do you have a brand that has a reputation? Can you put out guarantees like price or product guarantees? Can you put free shipping and free returns on your site? All of these things, again, I've been doing e-commerce now 20 years. I've seen appreciable conversion rate improvements for every single thing that I've put in this presentation so far. So I can't pull the data anymore, but that's basically it. So this is actually really, really important, and this is really the point I wanted to end on, and I think I'm running way ahead, which is great. Are you asking your customers for feedback on your site, right? Are you doing something like 4C results is one of the ones that I've used in the past, or Medallia? Some of these tools where you're asking people for information about what they don't like or where they're frustrated with your site. I really had a great experience with 4C results at a prior company where we put in this tool, we were asking on a regular basis, and what I loved is they would come back to us with the 3 things that would make the biggest difference in customer satisfaction from our site. And I was lucky enough to have whiteboards all in my office. I would write those 3 things up on the board, right? We had a roadmap for all the changes we were trying to drive on our website at any given time. And somebody would always invariably during a quarter come into my office and say, hey, we got to do this new thing. We got to insert this thing onto the roadmap because it's super duper important. And I would look up at the 3 things on the board and I'd say, tell me about how it relates to one of those 3 things that is the most important thing we're working on to drive customer satisfaction. And if it didn't relate, I rejected the idea out of hand, right? And it had to go into the roadmap for the next quarter or whatever. But certainly, intra-quarter adjustment to the roadmap wasn't going to happen unless it related to those things. And so over about 2 years, we drove one of the biggest improvements in the customer satisfaction score that 4C Results had ever seen in their satisfaction score. And so they invited me to come speak at their conference. This is 5-6 years ago. Because we had driven that. And it was just that discipline of staying focused on things that our customers had told us were the things that mattered in terms of driving improved customer satisfaction. So if you're not asking and getting scientific data about what will make your customers more satisfied with their experience with your website, and it might be just something as simple as site speed, then you may not be working on the priority that's going to move the needle the most. So, hey, I don't know about you, but some days I feel like I'm getting beat up at work, like it's pretty hard. This is me after a nice mountain bike wreck. But look, I would love to hear from you. I remember my family when I'm in those moments and why work as hard as I do day to day. And the other thing is I like to try to be helpful in my life. So that's my 2 cell phones, that's my 2 emails. If I can help you in any way, like I said, I've been doing this a long, long time, and it would be my pleasure to help you in any way that I can. So with that, I will open it up for questions. This is one of my favorite photos. I achieved a life goal. Like I said, I'm from Colorado. I'm a big skier. I ski almost every weekend. It was a really snowy day. I got the snow beard. I had always wanted that. Got that the other day. So questions?
Well, that's phenomenal. Well, first, let's give it up for Darryl for his great presentation. Who would like to ask the first question?